Good evening, folks. It is NFL Week 14 in the books. We're getting ready for Week 15, which means it's Tuesday, 8 p.m. It's Pick'em's time. Here with my co-host, Agent Warrior X.
Seasons, greetings, and happy holidays, sports fans. This is Agent Warrior X. I'm your co-host, Agent Warrior, and today, let's just say that Week 14 was absolutely crazy. And I kid you not, today I'm not wearing a Giants hat. I'm not wearing my Nets hat. I'm wearing my Yankees 2024 World Series hat because today is winter meetings this whole week.
Yep, and we got Greg and John, and today I got this because I'm in a grouchy mood today, folks.
It's a great it's Grouch it's Oscar from Sesame Street. I'm assuming, right?
It's kind of like a Grinch snow monster thing.
Oh, okay. Well, I should be in the holiday spirit because, yes, ladies and gentlemen, surprise, surprise, the New York Giants has the number one pick in the NFL draft, and I was not expecting Cleveland to lose. I was expecting Tennessee to lose. The Saints had an upset against the Buccaneers. And the best game of this week has to be the Bengals and the Bills. That, in my opinion, was the best game of this week. And I kid you not. We already know how Joe Burrow is when it comes to other teams in the AFC, but going up against one of the toughest AFC East juggernauts, this, in my opinion, was the greatest game of this week.
Heck.
Have you ever, do you remember that one pick that he threw to a pitch six, ultimately led the Bills to a comeback, Nikki? I remember.
Yep. And now we had ourselves a fun game at Orchard Park where we got to see the delight of the two teams, Buffalo Bills and Cincinnati Bengals, playing in the snow. Josh Allen had an excellent game, did his usual Josh Allen thing, passing touchdowns plus one scoring touchdown for good measure as the icing on the cake. Business per usual for Buffalo on offense and business per usual for the Cincinnati Bengals. Not the best team, but they always make the game exciting to watch.
But you know what's more exciting though? That game with the Saints and Buccaneers. I have never seen New Orleans pull an upset against the Buccaneers. Well, technically, I did not expect that at all. And as for the Super Tank Bowl with the Titans and Browns, we already know how Shador Sanders is. He played his heart out, but ultimately at the end, Tennessee blew up their tank. But it won't be lasting this long because I already know for a fact that one specific team will end up blowing it. So I won't be surprised if the Giants do that.
Yeah, but the race for the tank, it's pretty competitive right now between the Saints, Jets, Titans, Browns, Giants.
And I
So
kid you not, if the Giants lose out for the rest of the season, they might have to trade up because the Giants already addressed the quarterback situation. They already addressed the running back situation, and they already addressed the wide receiver situation. The only thing that you need is defensive depth, and you need another receiver to complement the league neighbors. Now, about the game against on Thursday Night Football, that was tough. I kid you not, that was a complete shootout with the Lions and Cowboys. That was an amazing game, but ultimately the Lions came out. So, what does this mean for Dallas? They'll probably win the next one, but I'm pretty sure that they have a potential comeback if the Eagles does lose again. Speaking of Philadelphia, let's go to the next game. The Texans versus the Chiefs. We are officially witnessing an end of an era. An end of an era for this team in terms of the dynasties. We know how dynasty is when it comes to end of an eras, but this one, in my opinion, was the greatest end of an era. Patrick Mahomes, well, let's just say the Texans defense is a certified elite defense. And I kid you not, the elite defense that the Texans have, besides CJ Stroud, It was amazing. Unfortunately, Patrick Mahomes could have scored more. Now, on to the Eagles game. And I got a lot to say about the Eagles and Chargers game. It was a low scoring game, unfortunately, until the 20, until the second half. The football fun day was actually entertaining. Yes, it may be off sync in real time, but Sully, in my opinion, is the best monster in Monsters Incorporated. Yes, Mike Wazowski did help him to become the best monster to break all records, but ultimately Sully picked him off multiple times, which is why the Chargers picked off Jalen Hurts multiple times. That one, but the one play that was absolutely crazy was Jalen Hurts throwing an interception, then the defender fumbled it, Hurts got it back, then he fumbled it again. This, in my opinion, was one of the craziest plays I've ever seen in my life. And will say this: I'm starting to think that the Eagles and another team that we'll talk about later is the Indianapolis Colts. The Eagles might have another late season collapse. The Colts, now with Daniel Jones out for the year with Achilles tear for the first time in 2 years, and they signed Philip Rivers to a 1 year deal. I don't know what to say about this, but we are witnessing something special this season.
Okay, about that. First, you got the Philadelphia Eagles and then the Philip Rivers news. I'm still trying to process that one because it doesn't, I know it happened, but it just doesn't feel like it's real. It seems like something that would have been back in, like, say, Madden, the original Madden 25 franchise mode. It would have been generated during one of the off seasons. Because if you remember the original Madden 25 franchise mode, it would generate random storylines of, like, you get a random, like, Kurt Warner coming out of retirement or Ray Lewis coming out of retirement storyline. That's what this feels like right here.
Or better yet, having Lawrence Taylor come out of retirement will be the most random and strange thing, in my opinion.
Yeah, like this is like that Madden 25, the original Madden 25 franchise plot twist coming to life with Philip Rivers actually being unretired. Technically, we don't know if he's going to end up playing a game or not, but with the way things are going right now, Riley Leonard didn't provide any spark for him. We might just end up seeing Philip Rivers in the year 2025 in an NFL uniform on an NFL field playing down a football.
And I kid you not. I know Philip Rivers, we drafted him about 21 years ago. And he ended his career on the Colts after that pandemic season, ultimately losing to the Bills, but now he's coming back 5 years later for one last run. Is this gonna help them out? No. Is the Jaguars gonna win the division? Absolutely. Because I see Jacksonville potentially winning the tank division, except for the Texans, because the Texans are trying to win out as well. But the AFC South looks like a intermediate division.
And for the Colts, it's a miracle. It's a Cinderella surprise run turned into a holiday nightmare all of a sudden. It was already starting to show signs. You had 2 straight losses, but now you lose Daniel Jones against Jacksonville. Now he's done for the season. And plus, Jonathan Taylor hasn't been looking like an MVP as much as he did in recent weeks. So now it's looking like the wheels are going to come off. Where instead of remembering them as one of those great Cinderella runs, we're going to remember them as one of those great collapses, most likely. And for the
In fact, this is not one collapse we're witnessing. We're witnessing 2 collapses this season so far. The Colts and the Eagles. I kid you not. Jalen Hurts has officially played his worst performance. And you mentioned earlier in your little crash out, you said Jalen Hurts' worst performance was either this or that division or that wild card game against the Buccaneers before Baker Mayfield arrived.
Right. And I've had some time to think about it. I would say this was truly the worst because you had in this game, the difference between the 2 games is the Tampa 2021 game. Eagles were lucky to just make the playoffs. They got the 7th seed. They were kind of in a weaker NFC. They got in without any real talent on offense. And they ultimately got destroyed by the, at the time, defending Super Bowl champion Buccaneers. So that wasn't really that surprising. This game, the fact that he threw 4 interceptions and had a fumble when Dallas Goedert had a pretty good game. Saquon Barkley actually had one of his better games of the season. The defense played really good, getting to Justin Herbert 7 times, even got a few picks. And Jalen Hurts had the worst performance out of all the main players, both offense and defense, for the Philadelphia Eagles. I would say by circumstance, yesterday was a worse performance when it was all said and done.
Heck, even Justin Herbert balled out with just one arm. He literally balled out with one arm, and he threw less interceptions than Jalen Hurts. And as for the Commanders, yikes. And I thought that Washington was going to blow up Minnesota. I was dead wrong about that. And I was right about the Minnesota Vikings defense. That Vikings defense looks slightly elite, but we play against them next week. So I'm not going to worry about that too much. So I don't even know why Jaden Daniels is even starting when you have Marcus Mariota still doing his part and giving it all left in the tank before he retires. My thing is this. If Washington wants to continue to be good, they need to get a receiver. They need a
Linemen?
thank you. They need a lineman, and they need to have another O-line depth in terms of protecting Jaden Daniels. Zach Ertz isn't going to help anything. By the way, prayers up to him because of that gruesome injury he had. I feel like this year was nothing more than just crucial injuries we had this season. We had we had Malik Neighbors out for the year. We had Cam Scottaboo out for the year. We had Zach Ertz out for the year. We have Fred Warner out for the year. We have Nick Bosa out for the year. We're having a lot of key unit players just having crucial injuries. And that's the one thing I hate the most. I hate injuries so much that it makes me just want to say, you know what? Let's resume. Let's move on to the next season, and hopefully this team can stay healthy.
Yeah, and the shameful part about football is it seems like every season there's always going to be one team that has potential to make a run or at least be one of the top teams in their respective conference, gets hit with the injury bug. It happens every single year, unfortunately. This
I mean,
year,
look
the
at the
one,
Giants. Look at the Giants this year on paper with Malik Neighbors, Cam Scottaboo, and Jackson Dart. That offense, if you see the Chargers game, the Eagles game, every other game, that offense looks very solid. But unfortunately, because of those injuries, the Giants this season are far unlucky than the New York Jets.
yep,
Speaking of the Jets, this is what they get for winning that game against the Falcons. You should never won that game against them. And because of that, you're out of the playoffs. You're out of the playoffs with a QB needed the most. You play to win, I understand that, but ultimately you lose against your division rival. So I don't know what to say about it, but let's move on. And then last but not least, the one team that I did not mention in terms of the bye week was the Carolina Panthers. They have
that's
a
right.
shot. They have a shot to win the division now with the Buccaneers lost. If the Buccaneers continue to lose and Carolina grinds out, we could witness a very special year for the Patriots, um, the Panthers, and of course the Bears. But unfortunately for Chicago, Green Bay was too strong for them. And as for Baltimore, yikes. They are just simply bad this year.
Yeah, and for the Pan now with the Buccaneers losing, they're tied with the Panthers for first place in the NFC South. So now it's going to come down to the wire between those two teams of who's going to win. And look, the bottom line is whoever wins the NFC South gets a home playoff game. Whoever doesn't is missing out on the playoffs. There's no way around it on that one.
And you know what? All I can say is, let's get ready to predict week 15.
And it's perfect that we were mentioned the NFC South for last because we kick it off on Thursday night with an NFC South matchup between the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, the reigning NFC South champions, hosting the Atlanta Falcons.
First game of the night, in week 15, we have the NFC South showdown between the Atlanta Falcons and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Atlanta was coming off a tough loss against Seattle. This was no shocker because Sam Darnold was doing Sam Darnold things to JSN and the defense was elite. Now, Tampa was coming off a tough loss against the Saints, who are tanking for a quarterback. But Tyler Shugg actually did amazing and outplayed them simply. So if I had to choose one, I know a lot of week 15s we had some chaos, but this year, my first upset is the Falcons over the Buccaneers.
Yeah, this game it should in theory seem like a straightforward game. You're right, Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Atlanta Falcons, Bucks are the better team, right? But here's the big but. The Buccaneers have been collapsing lately. They started 6-2. They've gone on, lost 4 of their last 5. And Baker Mayfield's trying to play through an injury. We've seen this movie play out before in Cleveland. He doesn't perform as well when he's less than 100%. So the way the Bucks have been going, I got to lean toward the Falcons because the Falcons have had their number in regular season matchups.
Especially when it comes to meaningless wins. So there will be no big surprise if they actually pull this off.
Yeah, so I'll take the Falcons to get the upset in this one. The Bucks are just a shell of what they were. They're in full free fall. It's like they're at the top of a skyscraper, feeling like the kings of the world. Then it starts to collapse.
And I kid you not, I am going to say that this is one of those weeks that we could see a massive turnaround come December through January.
And then moving right along, we got the Chicago Bears, fresh off their tough, bad luck game against the Packers, but they get to turn around and play the Cleveland Browns, who
Next up, we got
the starter for the remainder of the season.
Next up, we have the Chicago Bears versus the Cleveland Browns. Shedeur Sanders has played his butt off. I kid you not. I got to give props to that. But ultimately, Cam Ward was the far better player, but the defense outlasted them. Now, Chicago was coming off a tough loss. And I kid you not. This is against the Packers, their division rival. But ultimately, for them, they lost the game. But I see them as a bounce back. Chicago over Cleveland.
Yeah. The Bears, hey, they're not happy about the way that game went. They're going against the Cleveland Browns team that's just waiting for the season to be over. And the Chicago Bears take out their frustration over falling short against the Packers on the Browns. And they take out that frustration of falling down to the 7th seed, realizing they have to win a bunch of games now, starting with the Cleveland Browns. While Shedeur Sanders just showed some flashes, it's going to be a tough go against the Chicago Bears defense, who's pretty underrated, mind you, who even got a pick on Jordan Love, despite him throwing 3 touchdowns. Now, they're going to take advantage of Shedeur's inexperience, and the Bears are going to have themselves a nice turnaround game and get that win. Ooh, moving right along.
All Chicago got to do is just win out. That's it. That's pretty much it. But next up, we have the Baltimore Ravens versus the Cincinnati Bengals, an AFC North showdown. The Ravens were coming off a tough loss against the division rival Pittsburgh Steelers. And the Bengals, well, let's just say Cincinnati was coming off a tough loss against Buffalo in the snowy weather. Lamar Jackson, in my perspective, should bounce back. But considering how Cincinnati played far better in terms of scoring wise, I could see the offensive scheme with Cincinnati if Zach Taylor doesn't miss out for the 3rd consecutive year. So give me the Bengals over the Ravens.
Yeah, I'm going to take the Bengals in this one because with Burrow, they just look offensively, they look like a more polished team, even though they had some moments of brilliance with Flacco. I'll go with them. Plus, the Ravens are just in a free fall right now. It all started on Thanksgiving night. Really, it's been going on all season, but they had a nice little winning streak that kind of made you forget about it. But it's really evident now that they're in a free fall. Well, the Bengals, you got a bunch of guys fighting for job security for next year. Give me them to get the win. I think it's just time the Ravens are going to start to come crashing down, just like Kansas City.
And I kid you not. I know some Raven fans want John Harbaugh gone, but I don't think so. He ain't going nowhere anytime soon. And plus, he's on the contract.
Yeah, I don't see it happening, but I take the bet. Yeah, Ravens are in that free fall. Bengals will get the win here. And then moving on, we go, speaking of Kansas City, this played in perfectly. Kansas City, fresh off an embarrassing loss to the Texans, now got to host the Los Angeles Chargers at their home stadium.
You know what's funny? It's because the fact that the Chargers actually played a little bit weaker, but the Chiefs, they played far worse in terms of the offense. We have the Kansas City Chiefs versus the Los Angeles Chargers for the final divisional matchup of the AFC West. If Kansas City wins out in terms of just winning the Chargers and just making it to the playoffs, but I could see this team missing out in week 15. If the Bills, the Chargers, Jaguars, and another team wins out, Kansas City are out. We could see the first time in over a decade that Kansas City missed the playoffs. But however, considering the offense is not really the same, give me the Chargers over the Chiefs.
Yeah, I know. Like, it's crazy. They say all good things must come to an end, and eventually it does. Even the best teams eventually come crashing back down to earth. The Chicago Bulls had to do it after dominating the NBA in the 90s. The Patriots did for a brief bit. The Steelers did in the 80s after dominating the 70s. The 49ers came crashing down. And now
The
Kansas
Giants did the
City.
exact same thing after 2007 to 2008, 2011.
Yep. And now Kansas City's turn to come crashing down after a great run. So, hey, I'm going to take the Chargers, pick up a broom, pick up a dustpan, and sweep Kansas City for the season and move on to 10-4. Because especially with that pass defense, because like I say, the Chargers, they are the third best pass defense in the NFL. You saw what they did last night, forcing the Eagles to commit 4 interceptions, 5 total turnovers. Now you got Kansas City, fresh off a 3 turnover game against Houston, a really good defense. Give me the Chargers to do more of the same, force Mahomes to make mistakes, and Kansas City's their Kansas City defense, though, could get some pressure on Herbert. It's going to be kind of similar, I think, to what happened with the Eagles, but I'll get the Chargers to come out, get the win. And plus their run game, too, should be pretty good. Now that Marion Hampton's got a week back into it, now, give me him, Justin Herbert, to find a way to win this game. Kind of similar to the Eagles game. Moving along.
This is another good matchup. The Buffalo Bills versus the New England Patriots. Now, what happened on Sunday night? The Patriots were back to relevancy with Drake May, and they're coming off a bye week. Buffalo was coming off a very impressive win. Considering how both teams turns out in terms of primetime games, but ultimately, I could see this as a shootout. Between Buffalo and New England, give me Buffalo. And the winner of that is Buffalo in overtime.
I want to lean toward, I don't know. This just rivalry, just to me, it just feels like with the way the Patriots are this year, this being the first time the Patriots and Bills has really been a competitive rivalry since probably about the mid-90s when Buffalo still had some of their core pieces from the Super Bowl teams. The Patriots were Coach Parcells, Drew Bledsoe, Curtis Martin, and they were contenders. But now, flash forward to 2025, Patriots had the better record, but I just feel like this is one of those type of situations where they're due to split team, just like usually the Ravens and Steelers do, or the Eagles and Cowboys. Now that both teams are actually good teams for the first time in a while, because typically it was the Patriots that were the dominant team. Then it was the
They
Bills for
dominated the
a few
whole
years.
2000s year, and I kid you not, that 90s Bills defense was absolutely elite.
Yep. And now, for the first time in a long time, the two teams are actually contenders in the AFC. But I'll take the Bills to even it out. It just feels like one of those things that's kind of meant to be. Josh Allen could go out and have himself another really good game. Patriots have been playing. I think they're a really good team this year. Maybe next year's when they truly become contenders. But I could see them riding this wave of momentum to a home playoff game eventually. And eventually the wheels might come off in the playoffs this year.
I could see Mike Vrabel winning Coach of the Year this year.
Oh, that definitely. Definitely. Because he took, in year one, a team that had been a dumpster fire for multiple seasons and turned them into a top team in the AFC in year one, has some people looking at them as contenders again. With Drake May, who this is his first really good year. You're taking a team that didn't have a whole lot of expectations and turning them into a juggernaut in the AFC. Easily, Mike Vrabel should be the unanimous Coach of the Year. It's not even close.
Yep.
But I will take the Bills in this one. I feel like this could be a shootout, but it's going to be one of those close games. Buffalo gets the win, but it could go either way. Now, NFC East time.
Giants. I know this is a division rival game, but this is a tank division. No question about it. You have the Washington Commanders versus the New York Giants. The Giants were coming off a bye week. They have the number one pick in the draft, which it won't last long. Jackson Dart was a man of his word. This whole bye week, he said he was going to study the playbook more often than just taking breaks. Have you ever seen a rookie quarterback do that besides Jackson Dart? Because normally we see other rookie quarterbacks take breaks, but this is one of the rarest ones. But ultimately, I could see how this plays out when it comes to teams like these, when it comes to the wire. But it's not going to be a low-scoring game, unfortunately. So I won't be surprised if the Giants blew this tank up. But because Washington has one of the oldest teams and their defense is pretty solid, I think they might start Jade Daniels or Marcus Mariota at this point. So give me the Giants over the Commanders to see how Jackson Dart versus Jade Daniels or Marcus Mariota. It will be a repeat of LSU versus Ole Miss in 2023 before Dart and Daniels was drafted.
Despite the team records, I got to go with the Giants in this one because with Washington being banged up, it's all hell and back, being the true victims of the injury curse, I'd say, because they had the most potential entering the season and we saw injuries destroyed it. But now you're in a position where the Giants, at least I'll say this, they're at least competitive in their games. They're at least showing some fight, at least trying to win games. And
it's not good enough at the end because the defense gave up too many yards.
But I'll say in this one for the Giants, going against the Commanders, who are all but dead, this is a more favorable circumstance to actually close out with a win.
And also, this sports, if you're watching this, I honestly feel sorry for you at this point. I feel sorry for the Commanders, and I really hope for their own sake, they should get some young guys that show some promise and develop younger players. And I know my dad is a Commanders fan, but I will say this. Washington in their future, last year was a feel-good story. This year was a fall from grace. And I kid you not, give Jade Daniels some help.
Yep, time to go back to the drawing board. Ah, ha, 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 ha.
I would be laughing my butt off if this is an upset. We got the Las Vegas Raiders versus the Philadelphia Eagles on Saturday. This is the first Saturday game of this year after college football. The Philadelphia Eagles are coming off a tough loss. This was really tough to watch, especially at the very end of overtime. Jaden, I'm sorry, Jalen Hurts was coming off a four, not one, not two, not three, but four interception game against the Chargers defense. He had a fumble once. AJ Brown couldn't catch. And Saquon Barkley was the only player carrying the team no matter what. The Vegas Raiders, no big surprise that they were coming off a tough loss against the Broncos, but it wasn't really tough. It wasn't really this close. But and I know some Eagles fans are gonna say, "We're gonna beat the Raiders. We're gonna do what we could." First off, let's look back a few seconds. That Chargers game shouldn't even been this close. Jalen Hurts was awful in the first half, and I know he in the second half he redeemed himself by giving a fake tush push, which should be banned by the way. And the Raiders, well, the team looks god awful in every aspect in terms of O line. So I won't be surprised if the Eagles win this. Give me the Philadelphia Eagles over the Las Vegas Raiders.
I'm going to say it right now. You better win this game, Eagles. If you lose this game and drop 4 straight, then you need to start reconsidering who's working for your organization if you lose this game. Because the Las Vegas Raiders are a dumpster fire in the race for the tank, along with the Giants, the Commanders, the Saints, the Jets. It's a long race for the tank, folks. So, Eagles, I saw your defense. You did look pretty solid yesterday despite losing. They should be able to do the same against the Raiders. Eagles, you bet. I got you winning this game for all intents and purposes, even with their flaws, they're the better team. So please don't blow it. Just win this game. Don't let another upset happen.
And trust me, nobody would.
Moving on now.
Next up, we got the New York Jets versus the Jacksonville Jaguars. Jacksonville, let's just say they're grinding it out. The Jets, they're still tanking. I'm going to be quick about this and say Trevor Lawrence is a far better quarterback than Brady Cook and the Jets offense. But in every aspect, Josh Hines Allen is still the best defender on the team. Give me the Jaguars over the Jets.
You got to just go with it's easily the Jaguars. Clearly, the Jaguars are better than the Jets on all fronts. Quarterback, running game. Well, okay, wide receiver, I give the slight edge to Garrett Wilson as the best receiver out of the two teams, but the all-round offense goes to the Jaguars. Defense with Josh Hines Allen, this team coached by Liam Cohen, just a better all-around team. Maybe not great right now, but they look great compared to the Jets. I'll put it that way. So give me the Jaguars to take the win.
And I couldn't agree more with you on that one. Next up, we got the Houston Texans versus the Arizona Cardinals. The Texans, their defense is officially elite. I do not care what anybody says about the Giants offense being terrible. I don't care about the Cowboys defense being great with Quinn Williams. This, in my opinion, the Texans defense is officially elite. With Will Anderson on that team, this is officially amazing, but I will be saving this. CJ Stroud is going to blow the Cardinals out. Enough said. Texans over Cardinals. Oh, and I do love their mascot, though, alongside Swoop.
Yeah, and the Texans, I'll say this, that defense are elite. They are, all said they're great at the blitz, great at getting some tips. They're excellent all around. They're dropping people and destroying them like prime Manny Pacquiao. That's what this Houston Texans team is. The only thing they're missing to truly become elite is CJ Stroud's best. But in this matchup against the Cardinals, give me the Texans to keep that momentum going. At this point, I'm just looking forward to seeing what happens when the Texans and Jaguars meet up to determine who wins the AFC South.
And we will see that later next week.
All right, so we got down the agenda. But speaking of games on the agenda, this is interesting. The Denver Broncos at Mile High hosting the Green Bay Packers.
We got the Saturday night's game between the Denver Broncos versus the Green Bay Packers. Bo Nix is coming off a great win against the Raiders. Julian Love was coming off a very good win against the division rival Bears. But however, considering the defense, I could see this as a great matchup. We've seen this time and time with the Broncos and Packers with Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning. We've seen this with John Elway and Brett Favre. We've seen this time and time, especially Shannon Sharp on that team in the 90s and Sterling Sharp. But ultimately, give me the Broncos over the Packers.
You know what the Broncos are starting to remind me of? The 2008 Pittsburgh Steelers when they won Super Bowl 43. Now, that team didn't have a great offense necessarily. They didn't score a whole lot of points, but their defense was excellent. And the offense didn't really have to do a whole ton. And they still found ways to win games. And ultimately, they won when it mattered most in the playoffs and became the first NFL team to reach 6 Super Bowls. Now, the Denver Broncos, obviously different situation. They don't have 5 rings, but it's kind of similar where they play great, even though their offense doesn't score a ton of points on a consistent basis. That's how good they are. Nick Bonito is having a great year. Pat Surtain, the best player in their secondary. The Green Bay Packers are kind of similar. You got Micah Parsons. You got Rashawn Gary. You got some really good pieces there on both defenses. And this is probably going to be one of those lower scoring games. But I'll go with the Broncos because they're the home team. I feel they got the slight advantage. But this will probably be an entertaining lower scoring game.
We see some entertaining lower score games before, and we've seen it time to time. But overall, Broncos will get the win.
Yep. Oh, this is an interesting one. We got the Rams versus the Lions. Stafford versus Goff saga continues.
And you know what? It's not just the saga continues. This is the 2023 wildcard rematch between two quarterbacks that worked out perfectly because Stafford has a ring and Goff doesn't. The Los Angeles Rams versus the Detroit Lions. Jared Goff is coming off an amazing win against the Cowboys. Sonic and Knuckles doing Sonic and Knuckles things. And let's just say the Los Angeles Rams, they're doing significantly amazing. So I could see this as another shootout. Ultimately, the winner, Los Angeles. Give me the Rams over the Lions.
Yes, I'm going to take the Rams over the Lions in a shootout because they're the more complete team. The Lions, while they're a good team, they might just be that one team that finishes with a winning record when it's all said and done and misses out. And if that does happen, it'll be because they couldn't close the gap in games like this. So I'm going to take the Rams to win this game and remind everyone who thought that the Lions were the long-term winners, that the Rams are the true winners of that trade, both short-term and long-term.
And you know what? Speaking of long-term and short-term, I could see this long-term going to the Lions. The short-term, Los Angeles. But they still need a quarterback, though, just in case Stafford retires. Next up, we have the Carolina Panthers versus the New Orleans Saints. This is just going to be simple. Bryce Young is coming off a bye week. We already know how Bryce Young is when it comes to big wins and must-win games. Tyler Shug, I mentioned Tyler Shug had an amazing week. But ultimately, the winner of this, Carolina. They had the advantage in terms of receivers. Enough said.
I'm going to leave this short and sweet. I know the New Orleans Saints, 2 of their 3 wins come against the Panthers and Bucks, and good for the Saints. They managed to win 2 division rivalry games. At least you did something, but your luck's going to run out here. The Carolina Panthers are starting to get hot at the right time of year. Give me them to beat the New Orleans Saints and put an end to the little lucky streak of the Saints beating above 500 teams in the same division. So Panthers win it. Make that a thing of the past for the Saints.
And I kid you not, when it comes to Carolina, we could see a grind out similar to what Cam Newton did. And then next one, San Francisco 49ers versus the Tennessee Titans. Cam Ward, he was coming off an impressive win, but unfortunately, it's not going to be this way when it comes against this elite defense. San Francisco, they're coming off a good win, but I kid you not, I'm not going to waste even further. Niners over Titans.
Oh boy, this just is. I'm sorry to all any Titans fans, but this is comedy gold.
My real question is, what the heck were they doing? What the heck were they doing in terms of winning that Super Tank Bowl against the Browns? Why even try to sabotage the tank when you desperately need to trade down and get an offer? So give me the 49ers over the Titans.
Yeah, I think the Titans. Cam Ward was just trying. I mean, confidence booster for Cam Ward, job security for some of the players. I'm guessing that's the only understandable reason why they would try to win that game. But in this one, Niners are the far better team. Give me them to win. Moving along. A few weeks ago, it was a really fun game, but now it's kind of a sad game.
I kid you not, this is going to be a blowout between the Seahawks and the Colts. Colts, first off, to Indianapolis Colts fans, as a Giant fan, sincerely, I feel sorry for Daniel Jones. After coming off a promising year in the first half with Daniel Jones, who looked like he magically stayed healthy, but until at the worst time possible, he collapsed with an Achilles injury, and he was playing with a fibula injury. So I am not going to waste even further, despite the fact that Jonathan Taylor and Tyler Warren were doing their part. But considering Phillip Rivers coming back from retirement at 44 years old, I don't know. I really don't know at this point. Now for the Seahawks, JSN doing JSN things. Sam Darnold, well, let's just say Sam Darnold is doing what needs to be done. So give me the Seahawks over the Colts, and the Colts collapse will still continue.
Yeah, I'm easy, man. You got one team, the tragic team in the Colts, versus the potential contender in the Seahawks. Now, I'll say this. Sam Darnold, interesting note, he joins Tom Brady as the only quarterback to win 10-plus games back-to-back seasons for 2 different teams. And Peyton doesn't count because his final season in Indianapolis, he didn't play. But with that being said, though, back to this one. Yes, Seahawks are the better all-around team. They got more going for them in this matchup. The Colts are just going to start to slowly fizzle out. Give me the Seahawks to win this game, improve to 11-3. And Sunday night game, we got the Dallas Cowboys versus the Minnesota Vikings.
I kid you not. When it comes to Minnesota, after blowing out the Commanders, this is a challenge. The Dallas Cowboys versus the Minnesota Vikings. The Vikings were coming off an amazing win against the Commanders. In fact, they even shut them out. This is what I don't understand. How do you go from being shut out by the Seahawks when Max Broswell was terrible to JJ McCarthy coming back from a concussion? At least JJ McCarthy should have come back around the next week or two, but starting him this early? Why start him after the week after the concussion, ultimately giving the Vikings the win? Now, as for Dallas, they were coming off a tough loss. That one crucial fumble they had on Thursday night was unacceptable. But I'm not gonna make any more excuses. The Dallas Cowboys should be able to continue the grind. Give me the Cowboys over the Vikings. Unfortunately for the Vikings, yes, their defense is great and all, but offense is not good enough. I'm sorry. Offense is not good enough.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to go. I got to go with the Cowboys in this one because the Vikings, you had a nice, easy game against the Commanders, but now you're going against the Cowboys team who, with Dak Prescott leading, is usually going to get you 30 plus points a game. So I got to go with them to win this game. This is not going to be a good game for the Vikings. It's kind of a crash back down to reality after an easy win. So give me the Cowboys to win this one, improve their record to above 500. And then we got Monday night. We got the Steelers playing the Dolphins.
I think this is going to be a blowout, unfortunately, unless Aaron Rodgers plays terrible. The Miami Dolphins versus the Pittsburgh Steelers. The Steelers were coming off a great win against the Ravens. The Dolphins, there was no big surprise because they pretty much know how to beat the Jets more often. But in terms of situations like these, give me the Steelers over the Dolphins because TJ Watt will pretty much run all over them unless Devon A-Chain comes back from an injury and they still continue to ball out. But it's not going to be enough. Sorry, Miami.
Yeah, I'm going. Yes, I agree. I go with the Steelers in this one. TJ Watt, when he's on the field, that Steelers defense is truly an elite defense. And fun fact, out of all the NFL teams throughout their respective histories, the Pittsburgh Steelers have had the most number one ranked defenses of any team, which is believable because historically they've always had great defense. The Steel Curtain, Mean Joe Green, Jack Lambert. Then you even look at the 2000s teams, James Harrison, Troy Polamalu, and now with TJ Watt leading the way. And so I'll take the Steelers to win this one here. Because we saw last week against the Ravens how TJ Watt made a difference when he's healthy. And for the Miami Dolphins, let's face it, they've had the privilege of a lot of easy games. But this is where their luck runs out because even though the Steelers' offense is they're like a light bulb, they're either on or off, the defense is usually on point in games like this. So give me the Steelers to get the win and improve their odds of winning the AFC North and hosting a home playoff game.
And I kid you not, you mentioned the Steelers defense, right? With Mean Joe Green, TJ Watt, the quarterbacks of Terry Bradshaw, Ben Roethlisberger, and of course Aaron Rodgers. But in terms of the best players of all time in prospective leagues, you got to name a few for the North, East, and the South and West. For the North, for the all-time AFC North teams, Ray Lewis, TJ Watt, B. Joe Green, Trayvon Henderson. No, sorry, not Trayvon. What's that Bengals defense? Best all-time defender. I don't know. For the AFC East, you can name a few great defensive players. You can name
Bruce Smith.
Thank you, Bruce Smith. You can name Bruce Smith. You could name what's that Patriots defender? He was part of that. He wasn't just part of that 2017. He was part of like the early 2000s Patriots team. But I think that
Richard Seymour.
Yeah, Richard Seymour. Thank you. And of course, if you want to talk about best defenders for the NFC East, I'll name you by four. Reggie White. Reggie White, Lawrence Taylor, Carl Banks. For the Cowboys, I th- no. That Cowboys offense was just elite back in the 90s, 70s, and 80s. But in terms of the big blue crew, you have Lawrence Taylor,
Harry Carson,
Harry Carson, Carl Banks. that was an elite defense. It wasn't just Phil Simms just carrying the team, or Red Red or Randall Cunningham, or Emmett, or Roger Starbuck Roger Starbuck doing his part. But in terms of 80s and 90s teams, that 80s team's going to go to the Giants because the Giants defense was elite. But unfortunately, some crucial moments, like the miracle of Meadowlands, we had in the 80s, and then we had another miracle of Meadowlands in the 2000 in the 2010s, right? You remember that game?
Yep, Deshaun
That was one.
Jackson.
That was one of the greatest. That was one, despite the fact that it was a division rival game, but that was one of the greatest games we ever watched. But ultimately, in my opinion, when it comes to best defenders on each team, the best defender for the Steelers is TJ Watt. The best defender for the Jaguars, Josh Hines Allen. The best defender on the Giants, Brian Burns. And the best defender on the Browns, Miles Garrett. I could
Easy.
name you, I could name you some elite defenders having monster years. What about the offense? We haven't mentioned anything about the offense when it comes to all-time players. You have um you have Randall Cunningham, I mentioned earlier. I already mentioned Phil Simms, but we never mentioned Donovan McNabb. Now he came out of Syracuse. Donovan McNabb was elite for y'all. Meanwhile, we had Kerry Collins. The Commanders had like somewhat of a weak quarterback situation until RG3.
You have Art Monk, the
Yeah,
receiver.
Art Monk, and you have and uh, and the best Cowboys player
We're going to talk
on the
about offense. John Washington, John Riggins, the running back in the 70s.
where and the best running back in the 90s was Barry Sanders. Despite the fact that the Giants were the with a few great teams with Otis Anderson, despite the fact that the defense was elite with Jeff Hosteller, and despite the fact that we were the only team to beat the Patriots two times, we beat the Bills once, we beat the Broncos once in '86, we beat the Bills in '91 and 1990, and we beat the Patriots two times in '42 and '46. But as for the Philadelphia Eagles, they lost against the Raiders. They lost against the pro- beginning dynasty Patriots. They beat the Patriots once. They lost against the Chiefs, and they won against the Chiefs last year. So where did this lead all to? After that Super Bowl with the Eagles, a, a potential late season collapse hangover, the ultimate collapse. But I'm not going to consider it even further because the fact that the Eagles will bounce back against the Raiders. Now for the Giants against the Commanders, we mentioned this earlier. We mentioned that Washington is really the oldest team in the league. Despite the fact that they have crucial injuries, despite the fact they played their hearts out in that Denver game in overtime, but ultimately coming up short. The Giants, on paper, with Dart, he's going to pretty much scramble a lot more. And with Malik Neighbors out for the year and Cam Scottaboo out for the year, and having sole possession of the number one pick, that isn't going to last long. Why? Because they might win one, two, or three more games this year, which I won't be surprised. So we mentioned this earlier with the Jacksonville Jaguars with Trevor Lawrence. Ever since then, Trevor Lawrence, he has won a playoff game with Doug Peterson after that comeback against the Chargers. But ultimately, I could see both the Chargers and the Jaguars making the playoffs. Now, this is my hot take. If the Titans pulls another upset, they will have to have no choice but to fire their interim head coach and search for an actual coach who has more experience and more competent.
And for the Philadelphia Eagles, you're now in a position where the future for your coaching staff is going to hang in the balance of this next couple games. You got the Raiders, should be a win. Then you got the Commanders. You got the Bills and the Commanders to close the season. You should win at least 3 of 4, and that should be enough with the 2-game lead over the Cowboys to win the division. That should, even with their flaws. If that doesn't happen, and they don't even make the playoffs this time, and the Cowboys somehow win out the NFC East, First, Kevin Patullo's got to go. You got to find a proper offensive mind. Go try to find a coordinator like a Joe Brady from Buffalo, or try to offer Greg Roman from the Chargers. Somebody different. Someone that actually has experience calling plays. And for Nick Sirianni, stop working with people that don't have experience calling plays, because that's when the talent doesn't live up to their potential and the Eagles end up wasting that potential. It happened with
That would
Brian Johnson.
that's
And
literally
now,
the same mistake you made back with Andy Reid. Now I know Andy Reid is a great coach and all, but that's literally the same mistake you made back in the early 2000s.
yep. And in this case, you got to find, like we said, anytime you have a sound offensive mind there since Nick Sirianni took over. First, it was Shane Steichen calling plays, RPOs, Super Bowl run, Kellen Moore. Once he started to incorporate his style into the playbook, they started focusing more on the run and designing the run to suit Saquon Barkley's strengths. A lot of plays, not necessarily out of the shotgun, but more so under center. You started to see their offense click. Even last night, the running game when Hurts was under center was the good part of their offense last night. Now, that's what Sirianni's got to stop trying to be the guy, the signal caller. It's just not his strength. That's why certain teams have an offensive coordinator who designs plays and focuses on the playbook. So the Eagles got to get that aspect down and get it right going forward.
And I'll
And
be honest with you, they actually during the bye week, they actually did it. I didn't know they were going to do this during the bye week, but Brian Cox? I understand the Giants' run defense was terrible, but I didn't know he was a scapegoat all along. Yes, I know Shane Ballon was terrible and we let go of Wink Martindale, but this is my thing. Come Black Monday, Joe Shane should find a competent and experienced head coach, not some head coach who is a former coordinator. You should find a competent head coach, a competent coordinator, and of course, a good defensive coordinator. Now I know a lot of people. I mentioned this last week, and I'll mention this week again. The New York Giants should hire either Mike McCarthy, which I don't think that will be a good hire, Mike Tomlin for the Steelers if they part ways with him by Black Monday, or a college head coach. I think this is a bad idea. Rumor has it that Marcus Freeman from Notre Dame Fighting Irish could be that potential candidate. If that happens, if this happens, the Giants might have to find another coordinator like Kellen Moore for the Saints. I'll be surprised if the Saints fire him as a head coach. Brady Joe Brady for the Bills. And you mentioned earlier about another coordinator that you should probably take if Kevin Patullo continues to play terrible. Brian Dable. Brian Dable is a good could be a good candidate for you because he worked with Jalen Hurts in Bama. Now I'm not a college football expert, but this, in my opinion, should be, if not the the best hire for the Eagles if they part ways with Kevin Patullo. Now, as for Zach Taylor, if he continues to play terrible with the Bengals, you should fire him. At this point, you need to to focus on building around Joe Burrow on this offense and protect and get a good defender. That's pretty much it. Everything else is pretty dire. My question, and as for the New York Jets, what the heck were they doing too? What the heck were they doing in terms of that Dolphins game in terms of bad playing? You went from celebrating that comeback victory against the Falcons to now complaining about it. What who what coach in their right mind? I feel sorry for Eric Glenn, by the way. What coach, coordinator in their right mind would go to a team on a New York clown show? Heck, they even tried to do the same thing back in the past decade, sabotaging their tank, especially missing out on quarterbacks in 2020 during the pandemic. So I kid you not, if the Giants lose this game this year, take the number one pick. Try to trade out with the Rams, Jets, Raiders, or Saints to get a quarterback.
Yep. And for the Eagles, I mean, you shouldn't have to be in this position when you have a ton of talent on your roster, but really it just comes to finding someone that really knows how to call plays and that's a reliant signal caller and keeping them around. That's the big key for the Eagles because we see the talents there. We just got to find the right person to call plays on a consistent basis to keep it going every single season. It seems like one season we got a great signal caller. Next year we take a downgrade. Next season we get an upgrade, downgrade. We need to keep that consistent while the talent's here because eventually players are going to get older. It's going to come time to pay some people. Eagles aren't going to be able to keep everybody. So you got to get consistent with it now while you have the potential to win another Super Bowl.
If it's going to be happening, because you have some teams coming off from last place to first. You have some teams that are coming back healthy, and you have some teams that are up and coming in the future, but not this year, but not that season. The Giants are a perfect example. The Giants, on paper, with that offense, is solid. The defense, that front four, elite. So if they continue to lose out on games like these, trade back. Trade back and try to get a defender or compliment Jackson Dart. I would be shocked if Joe Shane trades Jackson Dart for the Giants.
Yeah, and that's another great point, though, too. You got sometimes your championship window, it could depends on who you got on your roster, the age of your roster, and all those factors, contracts, coaching staff, all comes into play. Sometimes it could be 4 or 5 season window. Sometimes it could be a 2 season window. Sometimes it could just be a 1 season window. Like we saw with the 2017 Eagles, really? That was a 1 season window. It was lightning in a bottle because then after that, they lost some of their key guys on 1-year deals. The team was starting to get older, and they had a few mediocre years, then that bad year in 2020, and they were rebuilding again.
The same thing with the Giants. After that 2012 year since, Eli Manning hasn't lived up to his expectations in the regular season. But in the playoffs, he's a completely different breed. Now, for Jackson Dart, we could see something different in terms of the future years. Now, after that 1 season with that, we could see something different in terms of that offense when Neighbors and Scatterwood comes back healthy. We could see another competitive division, but without Washington if they play their cards right. If Washington plays their cards right, this whole division will be reverted back to the 2022 ways, but the entire full division. Now, as for the Minnesota Vikings, I'm starting to feel bad for JJ McCarthy because could you at least give one of two, give me the 2 or 4 weeks of concussion protocols? I mean, yes, you started Max Brosmer, but this early was never the best idea in our opinion. Now, for Justin Jefferson, if Justin Jefferson requests a trade by then, I could potentially see this. If the Giants have the top pick, make the call. Make the call to Minnesota and say, you know what? You want JJ McCarthy? We'll give a massive haul for that. But unfortunately, they will say no. But let's see how this plays out come the offseason.
Yeah, and really there's just, hey, that's going to be the fun part about each week. There's going to be something new to talk about with each team, with each player, each situation. There's going to be something different to talk about, especially as we get closer to the playoffs. So I'll end on this note. Going into week 15, the teams to watch out for: AFC, you got AFC South, Jaguars and Texans. That's going to be a tight race for the division. AFC, now Kansas City is all but eliminated at this point. They could win some games, but I don't think they're making the playoffs.
And so is Minnesota. Minnesota could be eliminated from the playoff contention too.
And then you get the Broncos. It's going to come Broncos or Patriots for the number 1 seed. That's going to be the interesting race over there. And then you got
the
Buffalo.
last time we saw this was around 2015. The last time we saw this was in 2015 when Peyton Manning was on his last legs.
And now it's a new era for the Broncos and Patriots. But this time around, you got 2 second-year quarterbacks. So the boom between those two teams has life at least 5 to 6 years, at least minimum, possibly longer, with these two teams. And then in the NFC, most interesting is the NFC South are not, well, NFC South, it's a little interesting, Bucks, Panthers, but division-wise. NFC North, those three teams, the Bears, Packers, Lions. NFC West, you got Rams, Seahawks, 49ers. Between those 6 teams in those 2 respective divisions, 5 out of the 6 will make the playoffs. 1 team's going to miss with a winning record.
And it's going to come down to the wire for the next 3 weeks. John, Mitch, awesomeness. Thank you guys for joining. I'm your co-host, Agent Warrior X. Goodbye, my friends. Bye for now.
All right. And I'm the host of this, Nikki Stees. Thanks for tuning in. And until next time, have a great night.